Never too early to start talking about doing all this adulting stuff. What is going on? It is Crockett's Leading Cracker Mornings, 100.7 LEV. Here with my friends at Gross McGinley LLP, attorneys at law, dedicated people, innovative minds, professional service. And joining us today for another round of this thing is Catherine E. Sears. She's an attorney with the Estates Department at Gross McGinley. She's been practicing for 7 years, a native Pennsylvanian. Welcome back home. I know we just made a move back home, right? That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Good to
That's
be
awesome.
back.
Well, welcome home. We were just getting ready for this interview. As we're getting ready to talk about adulting, parenting is a big part of that. We both have 4-year-olds, and we're virtually hugging each other because we're going to get through it together.
They're wonderful, but oh boy, those emotions.
That is, I could not have said it better myself. Well, listen, not too long from now, it'll be a blink of an eye when we'll be missing these days, and they'll be 18 and ready to take on the world. And that's a little bit of what we're talking about today. Estate Planning Awareness Month is October. So we are in October right now talking about Estate Planning Awareness Month. So we're going to focus on kind of college age, 18, all that good stuff. But first question for you, Catherine, the importance of estate planning for all ages. Can we just talk about that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. So as soon as the clock strikes midnight on your 18th birthday, you are the one and only person in the entire world who has authority to make legal, financial, and medical decisions for yourself. And so for most of our lives, that's good. We want to be in the driver's seat on that. But it does mean that if something happens and you become unable to make those decisions for yourself, unless you have a proper estate plan in place, there's literally no one else in the entire world who can assist with that. So that's where there are really three core estate planning documents that really every adult should have in place. The first is the power of attorney. Second is an advanced healthcare directive. And then your third is your last will and testament.
Okay, so can we go? Let's start with power of attorney there. For college students, what I'm sure, listen, I remember getting ready to go to college, and to your point, you're probably thinking a whole lot more about your freedom and all the fun things you can do versus the kind of nuts and bolts things that you should really have in place as you're getting ready to turn 18. Let's start with power of attorney, and if you can elaborate on those other points from there, please do.
Absolutely. So as soon as a person turns 18, they are the only people able to make their own decisions. And through a power of attorney, by signing that document, you don't lose the ability to continue making your own decisions. I think that's really important for people to understand. You are still in charge of your life. You're not, turning over that authority that you've waited so long to get. However, you are allowing somebody else to step into your shoes and also have the same power that you yourself just got. So you're saying that somebody else, who's called your agent under that power of attorney document, can step in and pay bills, can file your taxes, can deal with registering your car at the DMV,
Hmm.
can put a hold on your bank account, if you lose your debit card, can open up a new bank account for you if it turns out that things got really bad when you lost your debit card and you need to start fresh. If you're studying abroad and you can't, have access to local banks, this is someone who can step in. So you're still in charge, but you're letting somebody else basically pretend to be you in a legal way.
A will and testament, I think, is something very hard to understand at the age of 18 because it's the first time in your life that you feel a little bit untouchable. You're just getting ready to go and live it a little bit. We know that there are unfortunate circumstances that happen. A will and testament is something that you should have in place. The idea of a will and testament, what it is, kind of elaborate a little bit for people that might be, getting ready to turn 18, families who are watching this, just kind of a little bit of what that is.
Absolutely. So a last will and testament is a document that says who receives your assets when you pass away. This is especially important for people who maybe have a different plan for who would receive their assets than Pennsylvania's default rules. So, for example, uh, if your parents are divorced and you hate one parent's guts, and you pass away unexpectedly, Pennsylvania doesn't care what your relationship was like with that one particular parent. They say, okay, if you don't have a will, your assets would go 50-50 to both of your parents. This is assuming we're talking about a young adult who's not married, doesn't have children of their own.
Sure.
And so I have absolutely worked with young adults who have said, absolutely not. I don't want mom or dad or whoever to get what little I have, as you're starting out. And so a will would allow you to make the decision of who gets your stuff, as opposed to Pennsylvania deciding that for you.
I have to think one of the hurdles that all families go through is just I'll say from an 18-year-old's perspective, there's probably two things I would imagine. One, I don't want to be talking about this. I would rather be doing something else is one. Two, to your point, maybe the family dynamic isn't the best. The communication on this might kind of be a one ear out the other kind of a thing. How do we, you've obviously been in this position for some time now. How do we kind of encourage someone to, hey, I know you don't want to do it. Can we take a couple hours and just kind of go and get this? I feel like it's that first step that's always the hardest. That first step, what can we do to help encourage that first step for somebody?
Absolutely. I think raising awareness is really the biggest thing, because this is true if you're 18 or even if you're, in your 60s, 70s, 80s. I have, 85-year-olds come into the office who have never thought about this. And, maybe they're getting poking and prodding from their adult children who are now in their 60s. Mom, you got to do a plan. So I think the biggest thing is raising awareness about what happens if you don't have this in place and something happens to you.
Okay.
So with a will, Pennsylvania has its default rules, its best guess about who you might want to get your assets. But there's no backup plan on the scenario where you're alive, but you're incapacitated. So if you get into a car accident on 22, or you have a traumatic brain injury, I had a young client one time who had a freak accident, fell down a flight of stairs, and was a vegetable for the better part of a year. The only way of allowing someone to step into your shoes and handle your finances and make your medical decisions is to do a power of attorney and to do an advanced healthcare directive. Otherwise, if you find yourself in that crisis situation and you don't have anyone appointed, then your family has to get the court involved. That takes way more time. It's way more expensive. And then in that interim period, there's absolutely nobody out there with authority to help you out. So the bills are piling up. You're maybe stuck in a hospital, not able to get discharged because nobody can make these important decisions for you. So kind of seeing that as the alternative to just a hour or so conversation with a lawyer, and getting these documents in place and hoping that you never need them, I think is a really compelling way to get that foot in the door.
I'm trying to think of how to gently ask this question because I think it's a question that should be asked. For an 18-year-old, you may have parents who have very good intentions for you and have your best thoughts in mind. And maybe you just don't trust is maybe a word that I could use. What they may be encouraging you to do. Listen, when you're 18, I'm sure there's a lot of influence that your parents do still have on some of the decisions you make. If it comes to a situation where an 18-year-old comes in there with their family and is talking to you and kind of is like, well, no, this isn't really what I don't necessarily want to do this section A. I don't necessarily agree with section D. I don't necessarily, your ability in your shoes to talk to that 18-year-old. Can we go into that a little bit? Because I think there is obviously an immense amount of value there to know that maybe no one is just shoving me in the back and making me sign on a dotted line. You have decisions that you can make here too that you think are best for you in this moment, and kind of your role in, I don't want to say refereeing, but your role in letting both sides know they can have a voice, but ultimately it's going to come down to who's signing this piece of paper.
Absolutely. And so that's something that I like to make very clear from the outset is that it is the 18-year-old who is my client. Doesn't matter if mom and dad are paying the bill. Doesn't matter if this was all mom and dad's idea to come in and schedule the appointment. But you, the 18-year-old, are my client. And so there is lawyer and client confidentiality. And I actually need the 18-year-old's permission to even have mom and dad in the room listening to the conversation in the first
Mm.
place, which is a pretty cool power position for them to be in, actually.
That is a really good point right there, that you can say, hey, hit the bricks. I've got a conversation that you wanted me to come here. Let me have the conversation. Absolutely.
And I have no problem. Like you said, I have a 4-year-old at home. So I could be stern when I need to and kick mom and dad out and just talk one-on-one with son or daughter and make sure, is this actually what you want to do? Are mom and dad even the right people? Maybe there's an aunt or uncle or someone that you would prefer to be the one helping out with the decision making. You can name whoever you want. There's nothing obligating you to name your parents.
I think perhaps one of the other things that maybe is a bit daunting for someone at 18 years old is feeling like this is a very permanent thing. The ability to make change, and this goes beyond. I mean, we're going back to you're talking about clients up in their 80s. But while it is signed and sealed, delivered at a point, it is your will and testament. It is your power of attorney. The ability to make changes and decisions over time are there for you if you would like to ultimately. You get 18, all of a sudden now you're 28 and you've got a wife and you've got kids, or you've got a husband and you've got whatever that situation might be. But I think something that's maybe you don't understand so much at 18 is that at any time you can come back in and make some adjustments if you want to.
Absolutely, and I highly encourage that. We tell people every 5 years, just dust off the documents, take a peek. That's
Hmm.
not saying that you have to update them at that time, but just refresh yourself what they say, especially young people. Set a reminder on your phone. I live on my phone in terms of where do I need to be and when.
I
Um,
know that. Yeah.
Again, 4-year-old life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the other time to absolutely update is anytime there is a big change in your life circumstances. So getting married, absolutely a good reason to take a look and see, is this still what I actually would want? Having children, for young parents, having a will is absolutely crucial because that document says who the guardian of your minor child would be if, heaven forbid, you pass away while they're still a minor. Um, so, when you find out that you're going to have a baby, absolutely revisit this, redo your will. Um, Hopefully, you are alive and well. And then, 20 years later, you're updating your will to name your child as your decision maker instead of naming mom or dad or one of your siblings. So these are living, breathing documents that can get updated as many times as you need throughout your lifetime.
Okay, we've done a good amount of pushing mom and dad away here. All right. We are parents ourselves. Again, at some point, we're going to be in a situation where we're probably sitting there going, can we just talk about this? Can we sit down? Okay. One of those situations, I'm sure that's very intense. It's already hard enough to see maybe your kids go away, go to school, go to college. If they go out of state, they move away, they do all of those things. Deep breath, sigh, we're there. Being abroad is a big thing in college. Studying abroad, spending as much as a semester, maybe more in another country. Um, can we talk a little bit about leading up to being abroad? I mean, listen, you mentioned being in a different country and having to deal with banks and doing all of those things. I guess my first question is, one, obviously you want to try to be in front of it. So a way to have a conversation with your loved one that says, listen, we need to talk to somebody before you go, just to make sure if God forbid something happened.
Yep.
Question two is, okay, they perhaps a 18-year-old stubborn person, never heard that before,
Of course not.
didn't want to have that conversation, and now maybe all of a sudden is in a bit of a situation abroad. Can we maybe talk a little bit about the pre-planning that could have eradicated some problems, And two, I'm trying to think of a nice way to put this. We have an spaghetti-o, and we need to solve that, but we're in a different country a little bit.
Absolutely. So, you raised some of the big kind of practical issues, especially various parts of the world not exactly known to be the safest. You hear stories all the time about identities being stolen or pickpocketing, or someone got a hold of my passport, or my money or whatever. And so, if you find yourself in that type of crisis situation, and you need to put a freeze on your bank account. Well, what happens if you bank with a local Lehigh Valley bank and they're in a totally different time zone? And so this happens, in the middle of the night
Mm.
in Pennsylvania. And then you're going to be asleep during business hours the next day to try to wait on hold and do all of the crisis type stuff.
Mhm.
Versus if you have a power of attorney, then it's, a call, a message to mom and dad or whoever you name as agent. Hey, this stuff just happened. Can you take care of this for me? And the banks are able to listen to mom and dad in that crisis situation.
Listen, we're talking about Estate Planning Awareness Month in October, and obviously a big part of our conversation right now is that turning 18, looking to the future, thinking of all those things. You alluded to it earlier. I just want to talk a little bit. If you've gone this far through life and you're well into your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, beyond, and these are things that you perhaps still haven't kicked a door on, or as you said, you like to tell clients every 5 years, take the dust off, look at it, give it a once over, see where you are. Anytime is a good time to come in and talk about estate planning. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, as we focus on October, for someone that hasn't quite taken that step yet, for somebody that hasn't, has honestly, it's so funny. I'll use this comparison for myself. My wife is the planner. She needs things. Ducks need to be in rows. We have to know how many ducks we have at any given moment.
Of
All
course.
of those things. Me, I'm by the pond. I can see I got eyes on the ducks. Like
Sure,
I'm
sure.
seeing the ducks. That point being that she has her stuff a little bit more in order than I typically do. If you are a person like me who has your ducks on a pond and you keep an eye on your ducks, but like you're just today's a day, tomorrow's a new day, the next day will be a new day. Let's just see where the ducks end up. For somebody who is like that, like me, not so great thinking. What are we saying to kind of bring people along to be like, hey, I understand this isn't necessarily an easy conversation to have or thing to think about, and maybe you've got aging parents or aging siblings or any number of situations in your life, but in Estate Planning Awareness Month, a good time to come in October. Just kind of what helps you get that process going.
Yeah, I think it's oftentimes a crisis that brings people in. A lot of the time we have maybe middle-aged couples who did just go through this with their elderly parents. And so now, I hear the horror stories. I'm not going to let this happen to my kids, what
Hmm,
I just had to go through. And so it does often seem to come about as a result of a crisis situation. I don't want that to happen to me.
sure.
So I think if you kind of are aware of the fact that, hey, look, just do the stitch in time, get it out of the way. That way you don't have to worry about it. Maybe us planners can start kind of nagging and poking our loved ones. Come on, we got to do this. We got to do this. It really makes for so much of a more, um, I'm not going to say stress free, because obviously these documents are needed in stressful situations. But it takes one bad element out of
Sure.
a situation that's going to be pretty lousy anyway.
Sure. I think the phrase we used a little earlier was peace of mind, a little bit
Yes.
of peace of mind.
Yes.
Probably by the time you get done, maybe not the first thing you want to do or think about, but when you get to the other side of it, you've got document side, you've got things in order. That peace of mind is certainly there.
Absolutely. The number of clients that I've seen, when they come into the office and they sign the documents, they physically look lighter when they're done.
Sure.
And
Sure.
they say, inevitably, this was so painless. You made this fun. Um, I'm so relieved I have this done now. I didn't realize how much it was weighing on me. Once you start thinking about it, um, it really is pretty scary and pretty depressing. And so if
Yeah. um, yes, I can say from my perspective, my parents, since they've gone anywhere, if they were going on a flight since I was 18 years old, have said, "Here's where the documents are. Here's what," and you go, guys, just don't make me think about this. Just go enjoy the flight, kids. I am now in the same position you once were in, Catherine. We're here. We got just smile and nod. Accept those things. Help them out if they don't have their own things figured out with estate planning, because it really just go a peace of mind is a very important thing as an adult. So whatever you can do, as estate planning awareness month is here, whatever you can do, Gross McGinley and Catherine, that whole squad over there, they can certainly take care of you. So Catherine, thank you so much for all the insight today.
My
It was a
pleasure.
great conversation. Best of luck to you and the 4-year-old. I know how that goes. It only makes you excited for the conversations when they turn 18, right?
Absolutely.
It is Gross McGinley LLP, attorneys at law, dedicated people, innovative minds, professional service. Catherine's here. She's an attorney with the Estates Department at Gross McGinley. She's been practicing for 7 years. We had a conversation today about Estate Planning Awareness Month in October. Catherine, thank you so much. Thank you for giving me peace of mind and making this very painless, a very smooth process. So thank
My
you.
pleasure. Happy to help.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your day, everybody.